This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
CBD is a game changer sweeping the nation. This hemp extract is the natural way to elevate your mood, eliminate aches and pains, reduce anxiety, and keep you sleeping all night long. It can even cut your workout recovery time in half. Get in the game today with 20% off all orders of CBD and lavender products from Lavender Lane, a lavender farm located right here in Milan, Michigan. Just go to lavenderlanemi.com today and enter coupon code DETROIT for 20% off your entire order. Guys, look, these amazing products are infused with calming lavender to maximize their effectiveness, meaning your CBD items only take minutes to take effect, which is way quicker than those pills you were about to swallow. On top of it, they are perfect for men and women. Lavender Lane has lab-tested CBD creams, tinctures, and roll-ons that are perfect for any situation, even if you're on the go. Put your health back in your hands by heading over to lavenderlanemi.com and entering coupon code DETROIT for 20% off your entire order of CBD and lavender products. What do you have to lose? Your satisfaction is guaranteed or your money back. So if you need lavender gifts for your loved ones or just looking for the natural way to ease your discomfort with CBD, go to lavenderlanemi.com and use coupon code DETROIT to unlock these miraculous benefits of CBD and lavender. That's lavenderlanemi.com. And remember, use coupon code DETROIT for 20% off your CBD and lavender products from Michigan's own Lavender Lane.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome in, everybody, to the latest edition of the Doc and Jock podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. On today's episode, we're going to recap all the happenings of the trade deadline. Even though a whole hell of a lot of nothing happened, we got to talk about what the hell the Lions did in terms of standing pat. My cousin, Adam Strozinski, is joining me to break it all down in regards to the Detroit Lions and to give him an opportunity in the second half of the podcast to at least enjoy a Michigan victory where they look like a decent college football team. Allow him to bask in the glow of one performance where Jim Harbaugh lived up to the hype and actually took that Michigan program where it needed to be for one game. So definitely stay tuned for that. Adam,
look, you're gonna
what's up?
want to stick around. You're gonna want to stick around for the second half of that podcast because
You're excited, huh?
No, I'm not. But I'm going to explain to you why Michigan won, what happened, and how the sun sometimes shines on a cat's ass every once in a while. And Jim Harbaugh is that cat's ass where the sun miraculously shined on him. So I'm going to explain to you what happened, why it took place, and how come Michigan was able to get a gigantic W against Notre Dame when this guy right here with two thumbs pointing at himself said that Notre Dame was going to jail sex the Michigan Wolverines. And I will explain to you what I did not take into account and why Michigan was able to come away with a big old dub. But I want to talk Lions with you because this was one of those trade deadlines where I was anticipating everything. I thought everybody was going to move. I was watching ESPN, checking my phone, scrolling Twitter, following you on SI.com. And what did I come away with?
Nothing.
A whole lot of wah. Yeah, bro. What happened here?
Well, I guess everyone noticed that across the NFL, I guess the general managers were demanding quite a bit, and the cost was too high for a lot of these moves. And I'm not certain that the NFL, in terms of their desire to hype up the trade deadline and then to have only one trade for Aqib Talib, that's a bunch of nothing to hype all that up. But I think, it's pretty straightforward. General managers don't want to, let go of talent for nothing. And because of the fact Ramsey got traded for high draft picks and a lot of the moves that do get made for the high-priced talent involve a lot of draft picks. Obviously, when the Bears send and ship a bunch of draft picks to the Raiders for Khalil Mack, general managers start putting some value on their guys, and they're not going to just let these guys go. So it wasn't much ado about nothing, and I can understand that across the league, but specifically for the Lions, to stand pat with one glaring weakness on their roster was really tough. I mean, to not address the running game, I know Matt Patricia, every day he addresses the media, really emphasizes that the team is trying to get better, but at the end of the day, the team's 3-3-1, but the running game is a glaring weakness, and to not address it, I don't know if you can win a playoff game, when Matthew Stafford's throwing the ball 50 times and the running game potentially can't get a first down. And, then all of a sudden you cut on Wednesday Perkins to sign someone in the secondary. So, obviously I think that in terms of the trade deadline, the most disappointing aspect for me was the run game didn't get addressed. Now, look, it takes two to tango. I understand that whole aspect of it, but come hell or high water, if you have a glaring need, sometimes you might have to give up that third-round pick, that second-round pick, if you're going to go out there and make a move. And I know you heard it. It was reported on Wednesday that Devonta Freeman was somebody that the Lions had potentially inquired about. But if you look at his numbers, they weren't that good.
Oh, no, Devonta Freeman's been struggling all year. He's having a very down year. So I found it a little bit strange that the Lions went so heavy and so hard after him. And I find it even more curious that Thomas Dimitroff in Atlanta were unwilling to part with him, because he really hasn't done a whole lot this year. He's been – look, so Atlanta themselves have been underwhelming, to put it mildly. I actually at work, I work with a Atlanta Falcons fan, and he wants to trade Matt Ryan to anybody and everybody. He doesn't care what he gets. He wants a bag of balls for this guy. And I'm like, you do realize he did take you to a Super Bowl like 2 years ago, right? And he's like, I don't care. He's garbage. And I'm like, that's interesting. I find it funny because people compare Matt Ryan and Matt Stafford all the time, right? They're kind of in that same quarterback tier. So I was like, that's insane to me, because this is a guy who just got you to the promised land. And if your coaching staff, not so much your quarterback, but your coaching staff, decided to run the ball in the second half, you might have won a Super Bowl. Interesting. But yes, back to the actual running game, which was the weak link in that Super Bowl when they didn't run it at all, and is the weak link today. Look, he's having a down year. It's not been good. Surprised that the Lions went so heavy and so hard at him, especially when you got a guy like Melvin Gordon, or even the reports that Le'Veon Bell was available if you just came with the right offer. And yet the Lions offered what would appear nothing for either one of these guys. Now, Melvin Gordon, I kind of get. It's all about the contract. And I think Le'Veon Bell, his deal was a little bit about the contract as well. Not so much that he doesn't have a contract like Melvin Gordon does after this year, but so much more to the fact that his contract is as high as it is. I found it interesting that the Lions didn't do anything to address this position. And I get going after a guy like Devonta Freeman because he does have a contract that is palpable. He's a guy who's been in the league for a while. He has shown what he can do. I wouldn't call him a 3-down back necessarily, but he is a guy who can be on the field for all 3 downs. He doesn't have a problem catching the ball out of the backfield. But all that being said, it's not been a good year for him, and it really looks like he's going to be on the downside of his career. Running backs are interesting. When it goes quick, and you can kind of see it. I mean, look at a guy like Todd Gurley, right? Todd Gurley really hasn't been right for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Everybody praises Todd Gurley like he's still this great running back, but go look at the numbers. Look real close. He has been very good for at least 18 months now. Melvin Gordon might be another guy where it might just catch up to him. Sitting out for as long as he did, not participating in OTAs, it really puts you behind the 8 ball, and then it's really hard to catch back up. Le'Veon Bell, another guy who sat out an entire year, and did it hurt his stock? Maybe not when it comes to him signing his contract, but is he more a product of the Jets' offensive line, or is this because he did miss an entire year and he's behind the 8 ball? It's really strange when guys decide to sit out, and then when it goes, because you see it far too many times where running backs go back to Sean Alexander. Remember Sean Alexander when he played for the Seattle Seahawks? There was a year there where I think they handed him the ball 380 times. I think he touched the ball almost 500 times. He was like their only weapon on offense. So between running the ball and catching the ball, he touched the ball like 500 times. The next year, he was a shell of himself. Running backs have only so many carries in their body before they break down, both mentally and physically. And then they just become guys who are just out there. So when you go to trade for a running back, it's interesting. And I find it kind of curious that the Lions didn't do more besides go after a guy like Devonta Freeman.
So when you look at it, I mean, this team, I think, is just destined to be 500. I don't see how without a solid running game that the Lions can continue on this pace. I mean, every game is close. You mean to tell me that the rest of the way they're going to win 7 of the 9 games they're going to play? Come on now. It doesn't make any sense. So
yeah.
So I just look at it and I say, maybe the organization realized, okay, this is year 2 of a rebuild, but I just think collectively fans are not waiting that long and their patience is thin. When this team gets eliminated from the postseason, there's going to be a lot of angry people. I mean, you're hearing it too. There's people already wondering and missing Jim Caldwell. They're wondering, like, how can Bob Quinn say that 9 wins isn't good enough when in 2 years you're not going to make the postseason with your guy? And I think it's so tough too because other organizations are winning faster. I mean, look at the 49ers. that team is rolling, and there's no rule that says you can't roll in the NFL. And it just, the Lions are taking their sweet time with it, and they're trying to get better. But I understand the Patriot way. I understand their method in terms of trying to find young talent that will buy into a system. But at the end of the day, you also need the key word in that, talent. Where is the talent on this roster that will get you over the hump? You have to have at least more than Matthew Stafford, Kenny Galladay, and Marvin Jones on this team in order to win. And I mean, even look today, Brian Baldinger on Wednesday, he's out there calling out Trey Flowers, and he's calling out, some of the issues with the Lions defense. So people are seeing some of the weaknesses as well and talking about it.
Well, see, I think there lies a bigger issue, right? So during this trade period, right, the one name who came up all the time was Darius Slay, arguably your best defensive player, because let's be honest, Trey Flowers hasn't been very good this year. Snacks Harrison hasn't been very good this year. Your linebacking core as a whole hasn't been very good this year. The one guy who you can usually point to as being a stalwart of that defense is Darius Slay, who has been mentioned or was mentioned in a lot of the trade discussions. I find it very curious that the Lions, and yeah, they ended up coming out and saying, look, it's going to take a monster deal for you to pry him away from us. But I found it very curious that he was the one guy who constantly came up in trade discussions. And I found it very curious that he sat out the game against the Giants after making a gigantic stink when Quandre Diggs, his buddy, his teammate, was traded away for what essentially amounts to a bag of balls and 4 dirty jock straps. I was quite upset about the Quandre Diggs trade. I ended up texting you. I think we had just got done wrapping up our podcast, or it was like the day after, it was the day that our podcast was released last week, and the news about Diggs broke, and I was pissed because I like Quandre Diggs. I like what he brought to this team. You had made the point that if you look at the film, he really hasn't performed. A guy like Darius Slay takes this to heart, gets really bent out of shape, and basically says nobody's safe. It's all a business, and essentially says it's a bunch of BS. Next thing you know, he's like, you know what, guys? I'm not healthy enough. I'm not playing. I'm not doing it. And he basically went into business for himself and said, hey, I'm going to take care of number one. Number one is me. Y'all going to trade me? Cool. I ain't playing this week, and let's see what happens. Now, the Lions were able and fortunate enough to get a win, but I think that win comes off the hands of Matt Stafford playing incredible football, which we're going to get to here in a minute. But were you surprised at all that Darius Slay is the guy? He is the name that got kicked around like he was a volleyball or a soccer ball on the pitch, because it was like that was the only guy connected to the Lions that just kept coming up. Darius Slay, Darius Slay, Darius Slay. Then every now and then you hear Melvin Gordon come in, or fans would say Le'Veon Bell, but it was just Darius Slay's name being tossed out there repeatedly.
See, here's the challenge, is that Darius Slay got hurt, and that obviously affects how much maybe teams would be willing to hand over the Detroit Lions. And I just think that at the end of the day, you can't trade Quandre Diggs and Darius Slay, and this fan base would erupt in anger. You couldn't do it.
What would you do? Because you just traded a starting safety and you traded your best cornerback, arguably a top 5 corner in the league. And what do you got? Because your defensive line, what we thought was the strength of this team, has been absolute trash most of this year. Your linebacking core is still a bunch of question marks back there. So what are you going to do? Because you just trade your best player on defense? It wouldn't make any sense to anybody.
Yeah, well, there's reports now that potentially, the Lions may part ways with Darius Slay, and it just seems like whether it's emotional or, anything related to his locker room antics, I just think business-wise, the Patriots don't sign cornerbacks that are in their late 20s to big money deals, and Darius Slay wants the contract. And doesn't it speak largely to everybody that looks that, hey, the guy that they forked over the money to was Damon Harrison and not Darius Slay, the guy that was already here? So it just makes sense to me that in the offseason, similar to what other people are observing, it's going to make the most sense for the organization to move on from Darius Slay in the offseason. Or you just make him play out his contract and you get one more year out of him and you move on. You get one more year, make a run maybe next year, and if you get that playoff win this season or next, and then you could part ways with Darius Slay and keep the train moving.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if next year they go to the trade deadline and they kind of reevaluate everything, and don't be surprised if he gets moved next year to a contender, somebody who's looking for that cornerback help, somebody to solidify one half of the field, and they make a move then. That wouldn't shock me at all. I don't think they move away from him this year at the end of the year, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was part of some type of trade package next year when the trade deadline rolls around. I do want to talk to you about Matt Stafford, though. Matt Stafford played a hell of a football game on Sunday, and we would be remiss if we didn't bring this up. And honestly, it was back-to-back impressive weeks for Matt Stafford. What do you think this performance gets attributed to? Is this just him figuring it out? Is it just him playing out of his mind? Is it more just the defense that he was facing? What do you think all this kind of gets put on and attributed to?
You know how I'm gonna roll. I'm giving all the love to Darrell Bevel. It's all the Bev Master.
That's funny, man, because that's where I was going with it. I say it's all Darrell Bevel too, man.
Trickeration, keeping it short and sweet. I mean, the one time.
I love how we give no love to Matt Stafford at all.
Let's just give it all to Darrell Bevel.
This guy plays a perfect half. We're like, nope, it's all Darrell Bevel.
It was like, did you see that throw in the first quarter, man? That was probably as bad an interception you're going to see from a guy in his 11th year. When you look at the film and rewatch it, basically he threw the ball to the guy. I mean, There was nobody open. He said it. He tried to force it, man. That was brutal. But, Matthew Stafford's playing well. The system is fine. And look, Stafford's not a bum. And here's the problem, guys. I know that people will start to analyze how we're saying things. But look, in what world does a quarterback of his stature get 12 years to win one playoff game? It doesn't happen. And it hasn't happened yet. This guy is going to make literally $200 million in career earnings without ever having a postseason victory. And look, I understand those that say it's a team game, but at the end of the day, you're still part of the team. You're still part of the reason that the Lions have struggled. And look, this season he's played well, and give him credit for that. And look, hopefully this year you see a stepping stone, 7-8 wins, and then next year you gotta go for it. Because I don't think 3 years in. I mean, how many more years of Stafford are we gonna come to expect? So, give credit where credit's due. He's playing well, and but look, he's got targets. I mean, throwing to Kenny Galladay when he's wide open is a fun task there. So, I would say that really I'm kind of more along the lines of when it's time to win a big game, when it's time to, this week, go out to Oakland and destroy them. Go out there and play well. You're going out there to Oakland and you're playing a team that's probably not as good as you are. Go out there and win and put together maybe a solid winning streak.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I thought when we're kind of throwing ideas around for the show today, and this came up, I thought for sure, I was like, it's all Bevel, right? This is a offensive coordinator who has put a game plan together realizing he essentially doesn't have a running back, which I think that type of offense fits Matt Stafford. It's essentially what he's played with his entire career, right? He hasn't ever really had a running back. So what the hell is the difference today compared to, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, with the year he threw for 5,000 yards? He had no running back then either. So you just go out there, let it all hang out, and watch this guy put together some of his best performances. On top of it, he's going up against a second-rate, second-class defense with the Giants. It doesn't really surprise me he was able to take advantage of him. And you're right, it's a lot of fun when you have some trickeration. You got a little flea flicker, and you get to throw it deep to Kenny Galladay, who's wide the hell open. So yeah, this is cool. Look, Matt Stafford's no bum. I just told you a story about how a guy that I work with wants to trade Matt Ryan for a used jock strap and a bag of balls. So Matt Ryan got his team to basically within a half of winning a Super Bowl, and that guy wants him gone. And here as Lions fans, all we want is a playoff win from Matt Stafford. You're right. Most quarterbacks don't get this luxury. They don't have this time period where they can just kind of, I don't know, sit and play around and try to win you something, anything. But as Lions fans, we're so damn starved for it. We just allow this to continue to happen. So Matt Stafford played an incredible half of football last Sunday. You're going to go take on the Oakland Raiders. Again, you're right. This is a team that is definitely not as good as you. You need to go and take care of business. You need to get a win. You need to put together a little bit of a streak and really start to build and add to this team. So go do it this week. Let it all continue. And it wouldn't surprise me if Matt Stafford had another really, really good game. So back-to-back games for Matt Stafford with solid performances.
So how are you seeing this game against the Raiders shake out? I mean, the early part of the week, Patricia said that, the Lions don't know a whole heck of a lot about this Raider team led by John Gruden. It's going to be their first home game in nearly a month. So it's going to be an interesting contest, another massive tight end that the Lions got to worry about. So It's going to be a tough matchup out there in California. Derek Carr and that offense and that running game too, in that, the Raiders can rush the ball a little bit. So I just see another close contest where it's going to be back and forth. And, this one kind of feels more like a loss to me in that you kind of feel like the Lions should win, should ride some momentum, but they're going out west and they've played some brutal games out west. And unfortunately, here's the thing. How's Tracy Walker going to be? How is Darius Slay if he does return? They're kind of banged up a little bit, and that running game is brutal. So you're going to, again, if you're going to beat the Raiders, you're going to have to zing the ball all over the place and really dictate what you got to do there to the Raiders. And so I find it tough. It's going to be a 50-50 game, at least right now, in terms of my mind. I got to figure out what I'm thinking in regards to how it's going to shake out, but it's going to be another tough contest. No easy games in the NFL.
That's right. And look, if there was ever a game built for your defensive line, right, it's this game right here. I don't think Derek Carr is a very good quarterback. I think he's serviceable at best. I definitely don't think he's as good as Matt Stafford. I think he's a tier below, maybe 2 tiers below where Matt Stafford is. If there was ever a game for your D-line to cause a ruckus and really cement their name and what you went out there and you invested all this money in getting all these guys, it's this game right here. If you put some pressure on David Carr and you make him throw the ball around and you make him uncomfortable, you're going to get some interceptions, possibly a pick 6 or 2. This is one of those games where your defense has to make his life a living hell and make it a nightmare. Josh Jacobs is a pretty decent running back. I expect him to cause some fits, but again, if your D-line plays a really good game, they're going to minimize what he does. Look, Matt Stafford, Kenny Galladay, they're going to have to show up. Again, it is kind of a 50-50 game because they are traveling to the West Coast. They don't do well when they travel to the West Coast historically. Oakland is a difficult place to play. On top of all that, it is a very weird field because they've got that baseball patch in the middle, unless they've thrown sod down. And then that sod is usually loose and rips up easy. So watch out for a twisted ankle there. Heaven forbid it rain while they're in Oakland. It will be a complete and utter mess because that field is a dumpster fire.
Have you caught any of the news on Wednesday that Stafford's sick a little bit, kind of dealing with a sore throat and things like that? It's going around his house. So he's kind of dealing with some stuff. Do you think that may play any factor in his communication in terms of calls and stuff like that? It seems like, look, any factor that's out there, look, Stafford's a warrior. He's been battling some things. He's not going to miss the game, but how much energy is he going to have? Look, when you're sick, you can pump as much fluids as you can. You can rest as much as you can. It has to have some effect on you. So I'm going to kind of dial back my expectations on Matthew Stafford. I think he's going to throw the ball a little bit, but not anywhere near 30 times unless, he comes out and is a hero and recovers by Sunday. It takes a toll, even if he is well by Thursday. Even if he's well by today, Thursday, then how much energy is he going to recoup and get back to by Sunday?
Did I tell you about how a couple weeks ago, I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago, I basically had throat aids? Like, I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on with my throat. It hurt so damn bad. Felt like I had a cactus in there. And then it felt like that cactus had gonorrhea. And it just burned when my throat peed. It was a complete and utter mess. You know what helped?
What helped?
Some penicillin.
Yeah,
Penicillin helped. And within 2 days, I took an antibiotic. Within 2 days, guess what? We no longer had throat aids. Everything was good. Shards of glass were gone. I was able to talk. I was able to speak. Honestly, you couldn't tell doing this podcast, but there was like a week there where it just was rough for me. It was absolutely rough. I was drinking hot tea. I was drinking coffee, anything warm to try to lubricate the pipes. And you know what? I muscled through. I'm not saying that what I do is the equivalent of what Matt Stafford does, but I'll tell you this much. Matt Stafford gets a lot better medical attention than I do, and I live with an NP. She hates me most of the time, if not 90% of the time. But when I need a script, guess what she does? She writes that script, and guess what I get? No more throat aids. So I'm sure Matt Stafford's going to be okay. I'm not worried about him. I think he'll be A-okay. He better be, because honestly, he's the Lions' really and truly only hope. He's their best player. It's what it is. You're going to Oakland. Oakland's a dumpster fire. People there are maniacs. They're absolute animals and savages. Matt Stafford has to ball out. Has to. And I'm saying back to back to back. Talking three-peat, baby. 3 weeks in a row, Matt Stafford has a big, big game. Cement it. Put it in writing right now. Here we go. Let's roll.
All right. Who are your three keys? Who's got to perform Sunday?
Obviously, Matt Stafford. We just mentioned him. I do think that the guys along that defensive line have to show up. More specifically, Trey Flowers and Snacks Harrison have to show up and have to cause fits for Derek Carr and Josh Jacobs. And if Darius Slay plays, I need Darius Slay to maybe pick a ball or two, maybe a pick six, take it to the house, help that defense out. Help that offense out. So really and truly, my three are Stafford, D-line, and then Darius Slay.
Okay. I think in this contest, obviously defense is going to be important. I want to see how Trey Flowers gets down again. I think that his momentum, hopefully from the Giants game, can carry, and he can perform well. Obviously, Matthew Stafford, and then somebody else. I do definitely want to see how Snacks Harrison looks after that minor injury that he suffered. It's a tough thing, but when you see him on the football field, oh my God, is he a massive individual. That dude, if he can get off a block or two, man, he can disrupt a lot of things. So I want to see how he performs in this one. And obviously another matchup I want to see is the Lions secondary and linebackers against the tight ends of the Raiders. I just don't want to see Derek Carr get off for like 4 touchdowns and, run all over the place.
Mm-hmm. No, man, I hear you.
It's tough to decide because, when you analyze a game, you could say, okay, the Lions should do this, should do that. They should be probably the victor in this contest, but I can see them going out there and just having a lackluster performance, a little bit of a letdown. So at this point in time, I'm calling for a loss, but that could change by Sunday.
I will wait to see what you say in your SI article, but I'm going to say the Lions win. They'd probably win by a field goal.
Nice. All right, let's take our first time out. We'll come back, and Adam will regroup and figure out why he analyzed the Michigan game completely wrong. Michigan played a solid football game, and one in which I think a lot of the fans one in which the fans desperately needed to see. We'll talk all about that and briefly touch on the Michigan State Spartans because really.
Oh, you don't want to do a whole segment on them?
A whole segment on what? Yeah, another terrible performance. Yeah, no, it's okay. I love before we get to the segment, I love the commentary by D'Antonio. Hell, at least we're not 2-7. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, that's good. Thank you for the 4-4 situation. Yeah, all right. The reason why Adam and I are able to broadcast every single day, the reason why we have a great network is thanks to great sponsors, and the two great sponsors of today's podcast are the Motor City Pawnbrokers and the Flick Chat application. The Motor City Pawnbrokers are the one-stop pawn shop when you're in need of quality, brand name, new, and pre-owned merchandise. With locations in Detroit, Ferndale, Roseville, and Warren, their mission is to deliver exceptional value. So if you're in the area and you see the Motor City Pawnbrokers, go in and check out one of their locations. All of the staff are trained very well. Mark and the crew, they've decided that, look, they wanted to change the perception of pawn shops, and they wanted it to be about great customer service. So anytime you go in there, tell them the Detroit Sports Podcast Network sent you, and you'll get quality treatment. So today, go visit MotorCityPawnbrokers.com for all the great deals and happenings at the pawn shop. That's MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. If you've agreed or disagreed with anything that we've said in regards to the Lions, feel free, head on over to the Flick Chat application. It's Detroit Sports' newest headquarters. What is Flick, you ask? It's a great group chat where Detroit sports fans can go and debate, Matthew Stafford, Darius Slay. If you're a big fan of professional wrestling, it's a group chat application, and it's really easy. I mean, you just go to your favorite app store, whether it be iTunes or the Google Play Store, and you just type in Flick Chat, and within moments, you're in Detroit Sports headquarters, and it's really fun, really easy. You can debate. We're growing the group each and every week, and you can create your own topic. You're in control of the room as well. It's just like a large sports forum via the mobile platform, and it's really fun, really easy. Adam and I go in there, we debate Jim Harbaugh, Mark D'Antonio. If you're a fan of podcasts and you're listening to this, you can download and listen to your favorite podcast on that platform as well. So download the Flick Chat application, get in. Don't miss out on great Detroit sports debates via Flick. All right, cuz, Michigan, in the rain, many people were a little bit worried because of past experiences, namely due to that game against Michigan State in which Harbaugh definitely made mistakes in terms of play calling. They learned from it, and this game was messy. But the Wolverines came out, and they were dominant, and they ran the football, and they actually had an offense that looked semi-decent, and it was a nice performance in that. Look, at the end of the day, when you can roll Notre Dame, that's a good feeling, especially for Michigan fans. They needed it, and the fans showed out. They came in droves, and they were excited, and they deserved to see that victory against Notre Dame. And look, whether you want to call it, a signature win or however you want to label it, when you defeat a team that's in the top 10 that you're a rival with, it's always good. So I'll give Michigan credit for that. I don't really care about signature wins because at the end of the day, I think even fans of Michigan they're just circling the day they play Ohio State and hoping that maybe you can compete in that game. Winning against Notre Dame, Michigan's done that quite a bit. It's not like it's something that hasn't been done. And quite frankly, the way the series has shaken out, the teams that play at home typically win. So I wasn't really all that surprised.
This is the big key in this Michigan win. It was the rain. The rain was the reason that, one, Notre Dame played as poorly as they did. Their quarterback, Ian Book, is not a very good passer downfield. Most of his stuff comes either on short or intermediate routes. He's not very good at throwing the ball. On top of that, you have a offense with Notre Dame that is not great at running the ball. All right. So now you have the rain, which limits a already limited quarterback even more. All right. Forcing him to do things that, one, he's not necessarily comfortable with. On top of that, making that defense for Michigan that much more efficient and effective because you already know he's not good at throwing the ball downfield. So you can just stack the box. So now you're going to stack the box. They have to lean on the run. The run's not great. All right, so now you can just bring the house all the time, putting him under severe and immense pressure, forcing him to throw the ball while either A, on the run, which he's not very good at, or B, making him so unsure and unstable that he can't get the ball downfield. So defensively, this is a huge win and a huge plus for Michigan. Now, offensively, this is where the magic happens, okay? Going into the season, what did we talk about with Michigan? We talked about how they wanted to become a team that spread the ball around, throw it all over the field. That's great if you have a quarterback that can do that. Shea Patterson is ill-equipped to do that. We've seen that now for, 6, 7 games? On top of all of that, you have the rain. Again, this is where the rain plays a role and is a factor. You have the rain, which then forces this team to now run the ball. They have to run the ball to win because you can't throw it in this monsoon that they were playing in. The one thing Michigan has been doing has been running away from what their identity technically is. They're a smash mouth, run the ball type of team. And you've seen it. It worked on Saturday because everything that Harbaugh has essentially built to year 5 is we need guys up front who can block. We need to be able to run between the tackles. You need to be able to get the edge if you get the outside. That is how this team has been built. This team has not been built like a Chip Kelly type offense where you're going to spread the ball around, you're going to throw it everywhere. All right. Your offensive linemen are big guys who are bruisers. All right. They do their best work when they're in the trenches and they're bullying a guy in front of them. They don't do a great job when in their pass pro. They just haven't. That's why Shea Patterson looks so uncomfortable back there. And now let's talk about Shea Patterson. Shea Patterson wasn't really put in a position to throw the ball a whole lot. And when he did, you know what he was doing? He was on the run throwing the ball. Guess where he's his best? We talked about it a lot last year. He's his best when he's on the run throwing the ball. And guess what else you allowed him to do? You allowed him to pick up the ball and run it a couple times. He's a pretty speedy, quick guy. And if he gets an edge, he's going to get you 5 to maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 yards. You simplified the playbook. You went and you leaned into what your identity really should be, which is a run-the-ball, smash-mouth team. You let your defense stack the box, crowd it, and you let them come and bring the house, which then put Notre Dame's quarterback on his heels, and he was uncomfortable all game. The rain was the deciding factor. The rain was the reason that Michigan and their offensive coordinator and their head coach looked like freaking geniuses. If it didn't rain, this game would have been much, much different. It just plain and simple. The rain was the reason Michigan won this game. Michigan took advantage of the hand that they were dealt, and they leaned into it, something that they have ran away from all season long, this identity of being a run-first team, a team that can run the ball and hit you where it hurts and where it counts. Instead, they wanted to be a team that can kind of trick around with it, throw it downfield, try to pick up some big plays. That's not what you have for your team. It's not what your offense is. It's not how your offense is built. So just run the damn ball. Run the ball, and when you need to, pass it. It's okay. You don't have to pass the ball 35 times a game. You don't. It's college football. You can run the ball 50 times if you need to and pass it 12. You know who won a national championship doing that? They're called Alabama. They won a couple of them. I'm not saying that you're as good as Alabama, but what I'm saying is you're good enough to get into a playoff with that style of offense, and you're good enough to possibly win a national championship if you figure out who your players are and what works best. And honestly, for me, it was the rain was the deciding factor here in this game. It really played that big of an impact.
So are you taking any stock into this whole halftime speech situation that happened at Penn State? Is this a rallying cry that will carry Michigan on to win the rest of their games, or is this just more of the same where, hey, you get hyped up only to get defeated by Ohio State? I don't know. Outside of Michigan sacking the quarterback and causing Justin Fields to leave the game, I just see the Ohio State train coming through Ann Arbor, choo-choo, and they're going to destroy Michigan. That team, look, to no fault of Michigan, everybody's getting destroyed by Ohio State. That's just a national program, and I can't even, look, outside of the trolling and the laughing at Michigan for losing again in the rivalry, Ohio State, bro, is awesome. And in all seriousness, Ohio State is playing at a level where I don't even see, if Michigan plays their best game, that they can compete with Ohio State.
Dude, Ohio State is playing out of their mind right now.
Sick, bro. What are they doing, man?
Yeah.
It's like they're shot out of a cannon every play, and that offense is like, okay, you want to stop this? Well, watch that. You want to try this? Watch this. And it's just nice to see in college football a level of proficiency that's at this level. It's nice to see. I mean, Ohio State's probably, arguably, right now as we're recording this, the best team in the country.
I can't really argue with you on that. Honestly, look, Michigan when Michigan plays Ohio State, I think it's going to be all Ohio State unless something happens to Ryan Fields. You know what I'm saying? Or Justin Fields. Unless something happens to Justin Fields, I don't know how Michigan's going to survive this game. I think this is nice window dressing right now. I think they're going to win a couple games. Look, you're playing Maryland this week. I don't expect a whole lot from Maryland. I think you kind of get rocking and rolling a little bit here. You're going to play Michigan State, and Michigan State, we're going to talk about them. What is Michigan State? I don't really know anymore. You know, going into the season, I think we had an idea, but it obviously is not the case. So all that being said, you're going to end up going into the Ohio State game, and honestly, you need some help at this point because Penn State's ahead of you, Ohio State's ahead of you. You would essentially need Penn State to drop two of their next 4 games. You would need Ohio State to basically lose to you and maybe lose one other game. I just don't know how you get into a Big Ten championship game at this point. It really seems as though Michigan hurt themselves a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So,
in terms of talking about Michigan State, look, they've lost their identity. They've lost their swagger. And look, at the end of the day, Michigan State had a nice run, but in college football, you got to adapt. You got to be willing to mix things up, and you got to have the right pieces. And unfortunately, you know, how many times can you take 3 to 4 star guys and uplift them? Eventually speaking, you're going to have to find the creme de la creme and get them to a nice level. And I think Mark D'Antonio relied upon his skills a little bit too much. And I think what tends to happen is you rest on your laurels just a little bit, and you start to think and you start to believe, okay, our system works. We can take guys that maybe aren't as talented, and maybe we don't have to recruit the guys, and we can take what we can get, and we can try to do the best with it. Well, unfortunately, in college football, you know, you have teams like Ohio State that are not only there, they're trying to get better. They're trying to find better ways to get better now. You see what I'm saying? Ohio State's trying to get better from where they're already at now. So Michigan State, unfortunately, they just stopped. They became stagnant. They didn't go forward. And, you know, in the last 4 years, unfortunately, when you don't have the right quarterback, when you don't have the right system in place, when the coaching kind of is substandard compared to your colleagues, what ends up happening is you fall by the wayside. And when Michigan State started to, like I said, and we've said it in previous podcasts, when they got whooped by Alabama, they should have maybe taken a year to reevaluate that offense and change courses and change the course in terms of the definition of that offense and spread it out a little bit more and become a little bit more modernized. But Mark D'Antonio was stubborn. And unfortunately, now here's the added layer that is a big problem. This whole transfer portal, you know, across college sports is quite interesting for players where they're like, oh, I'm not getting played. Peace, I'm out. You know, oh, I'm not getting the love from the coaches, or I'm not happy, or this program is not where it needs to be. Boom, I'm out. So you also have now, I think, doubt, you know, for some that have stayed and those that have already left. There's doubt now because, you know, you're taking the brunt of it. You're not losing games. You're getting whooped. And so it's unfortunate because, you know, at the end of the day, when the players in that locker room don't believe anymore, it's done. It's a wrap. And that's what's happened. The problem is the belief in the program is gone. When you're 4-4 and Mark D'Antonio's still preaching, you know, trying hard and effort and things like that, when he's saying things like, well, hell, be appreciative that we're 4-4. No, Mark, this is big time sports and this is Michigan State. You get the credit for building it up, but unfortunately, you got to take the fall for where it's at. He'll get the credit he deserves. His history is there. It doesn't go away. But in terms of talking about today the program is stale, and today nobody wants to be a part of it. Nobody wants to see what's going on there. Nobody wants to run that offense. Nobody wants to go to Michigan State. I mean, if anyone from Michigan State called, you know, my nephew and said, hey, come play offense here, I'd laugh. I'd say, no. Are you going to look like anything like Clemson? Are you going to score points? Are you going to modernize? I don't want Brad Salem coaching my kid. Forget the hell out of here. get the hell out of here with that. I want to send them to, unfortunately, Ohio State or Clemson, or hopefully, a school that can put up some points and at least have some fun. Michigan State, oh my God, it's a brutal watch, and unfortunately, and it's tough to say when you rewatch stuff on film, the players laid down, and that sucks to say. They didn't give the effort. They did not give the effort as much as they could have against Penn State.
Yeah, this team is definitely frustrating. I don't know if it's the offense. I don't know if it's the defense. I don't know if it's the special teams. The transfer portal does make things interesting because I think Michigan State has had I don't know if it's a record number, but it's really unprecedented to see how many guys have already hit the transfer portal this year, basically bailing on this team. So when the ship is sinking, and you've been calling for a change at the head now for ever and a day.
2 years almost. Like, come on.
When the ship is sinking and you've got players jumping off the boat before it goes down like rats trying to save themselves, that should pretty much tell you everything you need to know. I think at some point there has to be a coaching change.
Yep.
This was going into this year. This was one of those seasons where we're like, hey, maybe they rebound like that 2017 team. No, they're definitely not. And whether it be Mark Antonio being too loyal to his coaching brethren that are on this staff, or Mark Antonio just being too stubborn to get out of his own way, something has to change with this football team, because at one point it was the standard. It was the standard in the state of Michigan. It was that damn good. It was so damn good that I begged for Mark Antonio to come and coach the Michigan Wolverines. At this point, I don't want Jim Harbaugh, but I can tell you this much. I sure as hell don't want Mark D'Antonio either.
Yeah, and
so that's kind of where we're at.
It's where we're at, and it's safe to say, look, it's nice to get to the mountaintop, but the real work starts when you get there. And look, at the end of the day, I give him credit for doing it. I'm not going to fault him too much. It's unbelievable how hard it is in this landscape, but it's time, and that's just the bottom line. The bottom line is Michigan State's due for an overhaul, and hopefully we get it. And hopefully it's not a firing. It's just, hey, the idea is, I think the sentiment that people are kind of expressing now is Mark at the end of the year will just retire and they can do a national search and start this over. But for Michigan State football, it's going to be a bumpy ride. So that's why we're going to turn our attention to the number one team in college basketball, and that's the Spartans, baby. So we'll do that in future weeks as well. Great podcast, cuz. Oh, man, the hour goes by too quick when we get a chance to talk, but it's always fun. Thanks, everyone, for downloading. The Detroit Sports Podcast Network is doing great things, as always, and we appreciate your support. You guys definitely support us, and we can tell when we do our projects and they become successful. And that's thanks to you guys, largely due to you guys downloading and clicking and engaging. I mean, after a win and I throw out a question, almost 200-300 people are messaging. You guys are on us, and I love it. And Adam and I, it doesn't go unnoticed how engaged you guys are with us. And so we thank you. You can find this network anywhere podcasts are available. Just type in Detroit Sports Podcast. Search for Adam. You can follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. We'll be back again next week.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.